You're not watching the World Cup, you're being sold in it. Welcome to Coin Talk. Today's episode is one I've been wanting to make for a long time. And honestly, I kept delaying it because I wasn't sure how to say it without sounding paranoid. But here we are. 2022, Qatar. I remember watching the opening ceremony and thinking, how is this even real? The smallest country in the Gulf, hosting the biggest sporting event on the planet. And then the numbers started coming in. In just 28 days, humans spent $138 billion linked to the World Cup. Not just tickets, not just hotels, clothes that never got worn, subscriptions that never got canceled, food at prices nobody questioned because somehow, during a World Cup, your brain stops doing basic math. I'll be honest with you, I was one of those people. I bought a jersey I wore exactly once. I signed up for a streaming service I forgot about for 4 months. And when I looked back at my bank statement after the tournament, I actually laughed, because I couldn't explain half of it. In the 2026 World Cup, 3 countries, 48 teams, projections exceeding $200 billion. So I started asking a question that bothered me for months. Why do smart, careful people, people who budget, people who research before they buy, completely fall apart every 4 years? The answer changed how I think about business. And I think it'll change how you think too. I want to ask you something before we go further. Think of the last time you bought something you didn't plan to buy. Not an impulse buy at a checkout line, something bigger. Something you thought about for 5 minutes and then just did. Do you remember what you were feeling right before you bought it? I'm going to guess it wasn't calm. It wasn't rational. There was something else going on. A university lab in America. A neuroscientist named Antonio Damasio was studying patients who had suffered damage to the emotional centers of their brain. Here's what made his research so strange. These patients were completely intelligent, sharp, articulate. They could hold complex conversations, solve problems, understand everything you told them. But they couldn't decide what to eat for lunch, couldn't choose where to sit, couldn't pick what to wear in the morning. Simple decisions that we make in seconds, they were paralyzed by them. His conclusion was uncomfortable. Without emotion, there is no decision. Not emotion helps decisions. Not emotion influences decisions. Without it, nothing. The machine doesn't run. The human brain doesn't buy with logic. It buys with feeling and then builds a logical story around that feeling after the fact. That story, the one you tell yourself about why you made a smart choice, that's not the real reason. That's the cover story. I think about Adidas. 6 months before every World Cup, they release a campaign. And they never, not once, lead with product specs. They show you a kid in a narrow street. Worn out shoes. A dream too big for the neighborhood. And somehow, watching that kid, you remember something about yourself. Something you haven't thought about in years. Then the logo appears. And 3 weeks later, standing in a store, you reach for the Adidas shelf without fully knowing why. A Harvard study from 2015 found that 95% of purchasing decisions happen below conscious awareness. Before you think you've decided, you've already decided. The logical mind just shows up afterwards to write the press release. 95%. That number sat with me for days when I first read it. It means that every business that leads with features is speaking to the 5%. The tiny, exhausted, easily distracted 5%. The other 95% has already made up their mind based on something they felt, not something they read. So here's the question I want you to sit with. What feeling does your business create? Not your tagline, not your mission statement. The actual feeling in someone's body when they walk away from you. Can you name it in one word? If you can't, that's not a marketing problem. That's the whole problem. Now I want to talk about something that, honestly, irritates me a little. Because I see businesses do this wrong constantly, including ones that should know better. Limited World Cup 2026 edition. Offer ends when the tournament ends. Only 12 items left. You've seen these. You've probably felt that little pull when you read them. That slight anxiety. That sense of, wait, should I act now? That feeling has a name. It's cortisol, the stress hormone. And those 3 phrases are designed, deliberately, precisely designed, to release it. When cortisol spikes, the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain that plans, reasons, calculates, goes quiet. And the amygdala takes over. The ancient part. The part that kept your ancestors alive by reacting faster than they could think. And the amygdala only speaks one language, now or never. A study in the Journal of Consumer Research found that adding limited quantities to a listing increases purchase rates by up to 226%. Same product, same price. 3 words. Here's where I'll say something that might be unpopular. This tool is not evil. Urgency is not manipulation when it's real. A genuine limited offer, an honest deadline, a real constraint. These are useful signals for a customer who's been sitting on a decision. You're not tricking them. You're giving them a reason to move. But fake urgency? The countdown timer that resets. The only 3 left, that never changes. I think customers are smarter than most businesses give them credit for. They notice. Maybe not consciously, but somewhere it registers. And it costs you something you can't easily get back. Real urgency. That's the line. Last one. And this one is subtle, which is exactly why it's so effective. Qatar, 2022. Hotels starting at $2,000 a night. Then, relief, a budget option at $800 a night. And people felt grateful. Why? Because the brain doesn't price things in absolute terms. It prices them relative to whatever it saw first. That first number, 2,000, becomes the anchor. Everything after it is measured against that anchor. Not against fair market value. Not against what you can actually afford. Against that first number. This is price anchoring. And Daniel Kahneman, Nobel Prize winner, wrote Thinking Fast and Slow, one of the most important books I've read, spent decades proving that anchors work even when people know they're being anchored. Even when you tell someone this first price is inflated, it still affects their judgment of the next price. The anchor rewires the reference point. And once it's set, it's very hard to unset. This is also why I think a lot of small businesses hurt themselves by leading with their cheapest option. You're setting a low anchor. Everything you offer after that has to fight uphill against the first number the customer saw. Led with your premium, not to pressure anyone, but because it frames everything else correctly. It tells the customer, this business operates at a certain level. And then your mid-tier option looks like wisdom, not compromise. 3 principles. That's it. Emotional hijacking. Scarcity. Anchoring. Not 300 tactics. Not a marketing degree. 3 principles that explain most of what you see working in the wild. Here's what I'd actually suggest doing with this. And I say suggest because I'm aware I just spent 10 minutes explaining how businesses influence decisions, and I'd rather not do the same thing to you. This week, one question only. What is the feeling your business creates? Write it down. 1 word. If it takes you more than 1 word, keep going until you get to 1. That word is your foundation. Everything else, your copy, your offers, your pricing, should express that word. That's it. One thing. Do that first. The companies that win at the World Cup don't win because they have money. They win because they understand something most people never examine. The decision was never really rational. And that's not cynical. That's just human. We are feeling creatures who learn to reason, not reasoning creatures who sometimes feel. Marketing that understands this doesn't manipulate people. It meets them where they actually are. You can do that too. In your city, with your budget, with your team of 3 or 2, or just you. The gap between businesses that grow and businesses that plateau is rarely the product. It's almost always the understanding of the person on the other side. You have that understanding now. What you do with it is up to you. One last thing. I'm genuinely curious about this. Of the 3 principles we talked about today, the emotional pull, the scarcity trigger, the anchor, which one has actually worked on you? Not in theory. A real purchase. Something you bought and later thought, okay, I see exactly what happened there. Tell me in the comments. I read everything.